Hi, I'm Linda Vater, and I'm delighted to be partnering with Homeworthy to bring you into the garden, one of my favorite and I think most meaningful places to spend time. You may remember my tour of our Oklahoma City cottage, where my signature style first found a wider audience on the Homeworthy channel. My gardens reflect a mix of classic structure and cottage charm, shaped by years of hands-on experience, a lot of mistakes, and a deep appreciation for beauty in every season. Together, we'll explore timeless ideas, practical tips, and inspiration to help you create a garden that feels truly like home. Join me in living a garden-inspired life.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
A regular old 2-gallon or 1-gallon boxwood that you get at your garden center. I'm going to start working on it, and if I run out of time on Instagram, you can see the entire process on my YouTube channel. So hop on over there to see the completed work, and also subscribe if you like these tutorials. So basically I think I got this one at Home Depot, and what I love about this is you're taking something that's kind of scraggly and unwanted, and you're going to turn it into something that is really sophisticated looking. So what do I look for in terms of a good potential in a scraggly plant? Well, if you look here, you can see that this has a really strong single stem. I don't have multiple stems that come up that then I try to kind of torture so they'll grow into one. I look for a single stem, or at the most 2 really strong stems or really strong trunks. And I also want them to be straight as possible. If it's not straight, a little bit of that can be corrected when you actually pot it into your planter. So where do I start? Well, I typically start from the bottom, and I start taking off some of the unwanted branches, and I use pruners that are a little bit more substantial. Later I'll probably use my scissors, but I start removing some at the bottom, because what makes it look like a topiary is exposing this really straight trunk. And this is going to be what's called a lollipop form. It's going to be like a sucker. There's going to be a round shape, a spherical shape on the top, and then here is the trunk. So I'm just removing those bottom ones. You can see how it's exposing the stem and the trunk, and I'm trying to get as close as I can to the trunk itself so I don't have too many little nubs, because I want it to look as refined as possible. And then I need to decide really what shape I want the top to be, and if I want to include or not include portions of the canopy, of the greenery and the foliage. And so here it's kind of decision time. I can leave this one on, in which case the stem will just be about 2 inches long. If I remove this one, the stem, the trunk will be longer, and the topiary will be taller. And I really want it to have more of a dramatic topiary shape, so I am going to lose this one. Don't be afraid to do that, because even though it's not going to look perfect initially, eventually it will. As it grows out, it'll become a lot more uniform. I might save this to try to root it and make another topiary. And then, do I want to keep this one or lose it? I think I'm going to lose this one too. See how that lengthens the trunk? Okay. Now I've already got kind of a lollipop form, but the top looks very scraggly and unkempt. So then I'm trying to decide how large do I want the ball on top to be, and I'm going to make my initial cut, I think, about right here. Paige, can you see this? Can our viewers see it? I'm just starting to establish that ball shape. And while it's not going to look perfect, as I said at first, like a perfect topiary, by the end of the summer it'll be near close. It does take a little time and investigatory work when you're in your garden center to find just the right scraggly boxwood. This one, I may have said, is a Green Mountain. Green Mountain and Baby Gem are my favorite varieties to work with. I can make it look even more exaggerated in form at the top by lowering the top portion and making it look even more spherical. I'm not paying attention to whether or not I'm cutting between leaf nodes. If I'm severing the leaf itself, I really don't care. It's very forgiving and it will grow out just beautifully. If there are any dead leaves, dead stems, dead foliage on the interior, then at this point you can remove them. I'm doing just that. The other great thing about buying scraggly boxwood is that they're often on sale at the end of the season, so that's a great time to look for them. So like all pruning, you periodically want to turn it around so you get all vantage points. Sometimes there'll be just that one cut you're waiting for that pulls it all together. But in pretty short order, we have made a lollipop topiary, boxwood topiary, out of, I think, a $6 plant. When I'm finished, as it's growing, I will feed it with an organic liquid fertilizer. I like Espoma. As I've said earlier, I like their fish emulsion. It's gentle and it works fast. And that will, the pruning itself makes it flush out new growth. It's a signal. Pruning is a signal to put out new growth. I mulch most of my topiary in gravel to keep the squirrels out. And I can just blow off all my clippings without blowing away the gravel to tidy it up. And there you have it. In almost no time, a topiary from, as I said, a $6 plant. I might straighten it up a little bit with a stake, but it's that easy peasy. And then to make it really more beautiful, you can underplant it with something. This is an Ogun sedum. So there you go, a topiary out of a shrub from your garden center. Hey guys, this is going to be a little behind the scenes tour of my topiary. I just am in the process of putting together a webinar about topiary that you guys will be able to access later. But I thought I'd just give you a little tour pointing out some of the kinds of plants that I like to use for topiary. And you can see that it's really nothing special. It's just their shape and form and how they look in the landscape. So come on and I'll show you some different varieties. These are just a bunch of tabletop ones that I put together for the webinar. It's just boxwood, rosemary. Here's a laurel that I just dug up out of the landscape. But these are all tabletop. So come this way and I will show you some of the more common types of plants that I use in large pots in what I consider to be topiary form. So I really like basic geometric shapes. I think best of all is topiary. This Golden Fortuny euonymus is just one of the very common large-leaved euonymus. I pruned it into kind of a globe, and I roughly encourage it to keep that shape over the years. I've probably had this in a concrete pot off of my back patio area, I would say for at least a dozen years. I do practically nothing to it. It illuminates this space. It doesn't have to be watered a lot, and I really just love it. These guys, they always remind me of kind of like satellites. I don't know why. But these large boxwoods I got, I think about 5 years ago. I did find these at a nursery. This is a Green Mountain boxwood. I have 3 really large standards of these. I leave these out year round. I don't obviously have to do a lot to them. They maintain their good looks. They're in really large concrete pots that I don't have to move. I basically just water them. I check them periodically for spider mite, but other than that, they are relatively carefree. I do put stones and gravel on the top. You guys are always asking about that, and I do that to keep squirrels out and moisture in. I need to do another little top dressing on that. Now, if you come this way, over to the area that I think of as kind of a bistro garden, I've got another boxwood topiary that is planted in the ground. And here is an idea, guys. This one started out as kind of, I think it was kind of in a conical shape, a Christmas tree form, and it started to lose that shape. It had some damage on it, and I just noticed that it had a pretty good stem, strong trunk to it. So I just pruned it up into a standard form. So sometimes a plant that's been damaged can make really good fodder for a topiary. Over here, I love to use topiary that march up and down steps. So this is just a baby gem boxwood. This one's from the Southern Living Plant Collection. And it's probably my favorite kind of boxwood if you want to create something that's in a square form or a cube form. It grows, it's got smaller leaves that grow very tightly together. And I like the way it kind of mimics and accentuates the square shape of the wicker pot. This is a Eugenia that is not cold hardy. I have to bring it in the winter time, but it's so easy to grow. It really likes full sun, but can handle some shade. I have had this one again for I don't know how many years, and it sometimes pouts a little bit after being in winter storage in a friend's greenhouse, but I bring it back out and it does just fine. I love the way it gives punctuation and added height to the corner of this little porch. This is just another golden-leaved euonymus that I pruned into a double ball shape. These are inexpensive plant guides that you can find practically anywhere. It's just a matter of looking at the plant itself and its form to see if it would be a good candidate. That's why sometimes I find that plants that are misshapen or a little bit scraggly sometimes prove to be the best candidates for topiary in general. And then I just love the way that these architectural forms look against things that are loose and kind of fluffy. So let's go into the backyard itself. Here is another large standard boxwood on a stem. Again, I love the contrast. Pretty soon all of these hydrangeas are going to be leafing out, and they'll be beautiful and billowy and fluffy against the geometric architectural form of the boxwood on standard, and also these little boxwood balls that I have running up and down the backyard. And I basically kind of position them to look as if I've just tossed some bocce balls or some bowling balls or something across the backyard, and that's kind of where they ended up. I like that rhythm and repetition of that globular form across the space. So there's another one. I've got some more boxwood balls back in here. These are mostly Green Mountain, I believe. This is wintergreen. Again, try different varieties and see what works for you. A lot of times I'll just try whatever I find available at my nursery, and why not, especially if they're on sale. This is another small-leaved Eugenia. You usually can find these in nurseries and garden centers later in the season because they do like the hot weather. And oh, it's one of the few plants sometimes you can find in July or August. It's always a real treat. You can sometimes find them already in topiary form, or you can topiary them yourself. This one was pretty tall when I first bought it, and I think I've had this one for about 5 years. So they can have longevity. Here is a pancake arborvitae that I clipped into a small globe. It was really fluffy before, but again, I like that tight spherical form against all of this other stuff that has a looser form and spills out. I'm shaping a golden Oakland holly right here into just a classic pyramidal form. So come on back. I'll show you some other, I guess, maybe more unusual plants that I like to use as topiary. Over here, I love this one. I'm especially proud of this one because this was just a blue point juniper that the birds planted that just started out as a sprig that was maybe 5 inches tall. And I noticed that it had a strong central stem. I just let it keep growing. At first it was in a tall, narrow, cylindrical shape, but eventually I pruned it into this double ball topiary form. This did not cost me a penny. I just noticed that it was a good candidate. I left it in place, and over time I shaped it in a way that it was already inclined to be. So sometimes really good topiary practice is just identifying what you already have and what might work. It doesn't have to be an expensive hobby, you guys. This is a prized possession of mine. It was a gift from a friend of mine who's also a landscaper, a very good gardening buddy. This is a smoke tree, a golden smoke tree, and it came on this standard form. It's really beautiful in this faux bronze pot. Now, this is also the beauty of topiary. It can be moved. So that's the advantage of planting it in a lightweight pot. When it gets really, really hot in the summertime, these leaves will scorch and it won't be able to handle this really intense exposure where it is right now. So I can move it into another area of the garden that's a little bit more protected. So those that are a little bit more finicky, that you might have to relocate over the course of the season, you might want to make sure that you put them in a really good looking but lightweight pot. Here is another non-traditional candidate for a topiary. This was in topiary form when I got it, but if you need a really tough plant for southern dry hot gardens, this would be it. This is an Arizona cypress that's in a double ball form. I can keep it out year round. I love its blue-gray color and the fact that it's just a little bit unusual. This would be a plant that you could find very easily in a nursery or a garden center, and you could prune it into this form. So look for things that are in kind of a Christmas tree conical shape. See if they've got a good, strong, straight stem. That way you can prune it to your liking if you want this kind of poodle form. And then again, you'll just see scattered around that I just have more boxwood globes. Some of them I let remain kind of fluffy. Some of them are tightly clipped. Here is another pancake arborvitae. And I leave these and I locate them by the fact that, again, there's a rhythm and a repetition, not only of the same plants, but also of the plant form. And I just love round spheres. So you'll see that in my garden a lot and accented quite frequently in different kinds of garden ornament. There's a common arborvitae in the back that is nestled underneath this, what's called a Jardin birdcage that came from Gardener's Supply. A very, very common plant. It started out as a gallon size, and I was probably under $6. That's about 3 years old. It's very happy there. Again, a common plant that I have transformed into something special just with my clippers. And the more you do it, the more practice you'll get. Don't be afraid, just go for it. Just like a bad haircut, it can grow out. I have a couple of boxwood cones that flank the entry into the potager. And once you get inside, I also consider hedges to be a form of topiary. And this potager was planted maybe 25 years ago, all from gallon-sized plants. I planted all of them myself and just started shaping them over time. It was a relatively inexpensive project, not difficult. I did it all myself, start out with small plants and just, again, train them in the way you want them to grow. Here is just basically a standard tall oval form. I really like the way this looks. Topiaries are often used to punctuate garden spaces, and I like the gold variegation on this and the way it picks up other golden elements in my landscape. This is a lavender topiary that I've had for I don't know how many years. A lot of you will ask about watering, and do I mostly water by hand? And yes, I do. Now, in the spring, it's not much of a consideration, and really in the winter, it's not. A lot of these go to a friend's house in a greenhouse. They're watered for me there overwintering. In the summer, I do have to water them pretty frequently, but that's the value of putting them in large pots. The larger the pot, the less frequently you have to water them, but the more important it is that you mulch them in something like gravel to keep squirrels out, keep moisture in, and just because I like the way it looks. And this type conical shape is repeated with these arborvitaes in the flower beds in the potager. All of these are rosemaries, and all of these started out as just small cuttings that I gave to a friend of mine. I don't have a greenhouse, so they started these as just cuttings, and then once they got to be large enough, brought them home to me, and now I train them and tend them and shape them over time. One thing you want to watch out about with rosemary topiaries is they do have a tendency to get spider mite, so I use a horticultural like safer soap or something along those lines, something that's garden safe, to help with spider mite. And rosemaries need to be watered more than you would think. And then I've got some more topiaries in training back here. I've got some more rosemary. I love olive trees, which have something of a topiary shape. This is a bay tree that I may or may not shape. This is a pineapple guava. This came from the Southern Living Plant Collection. And then I love germander. It also makes a wonderful herbal hedge. It's an herb. I like the fragrance of it. It lends itself to clipping, and I like using it just in multiples in little pots. These were all started from very simple cuttings. Inexpensive. It just requires some training over time. So that kind of completes our little tour, at least most of it in the backyard, and I hope it inspires you to start looking at plants, even common plants, in a new way. It is a brisk and chilly morning. We've still got a breeze, and I'll apologize in advance because lots of chainsaw activity is still going on this weekend because of all the storm damage. So, back to the topic at hand. I'm getting ready to do a makeover on this corner, on all of these container plantings. It looks a little bit different every year based on kind of what my color palette is, how many plants I may have lost over the winter, or what plants I want to highlight. So primarily this year, I'm really into geraniums, both scented geraniums and pelargoniums. And then I did lose, as you guys know, I did lose some evergreens in these big pots. So I'm going to tell you what my strategy is for a couple of things in terms of what plants I'm going to be putting in these planters. But also, let's start out with a big question that I think a lot of new gardeners have and even experienced gardeners have, and that is the question of, do you use all new soil when you're planting new things, or can you reuse some of the old soil? So number one, this pot was filled all the way to the bottom, and as always, you guys, I put debris at the bottom. Okay, now, but it also had some old dirt in it. So what I did was take that old dirt out that had been in there for a while, and Stuart, you will, if you will very carefully turn around and show people that what I do is I just throw that old dirt, and this previously used dirt is really not a very bad quality. Nevertheless, I put the old dirt of whatever quality onto a tarp like this. And then what I do is I separate, and by the way, you never want to reuse any kind of soil that had a diseased plant in it. So if there was a plant in it that was very diseased or just riddled with spider mite or something of that nature, then discard that soil in its entirety. But what we're going to do here is kind of amend and supplement the old soil to get it looking good again. So I'm going to remove any sections that are just really root bound. In here, I've got some old bulbs that I had planted that rotted in our very, very bad winter. I'm going to kind of just separate that. Any other kinds of, well, let's just say organic material that doesn't look of good quality, like that. I'm going to separate that out. Now, if it's not diseased, what I could do is put this at the bottom, very bottom of another pot as part of my theory of just using garden debris to fill up volume at the bottom of the container. But this here, I separate out this stuff and it doesn't look too bad. And I've already done this on the soil I already have in this big grounding pot. And Stuart, if you'll show, it's one of two. There's another one over there. So this area is very kind of disrupted right now. So what do I do then? Well, I'm going to mix about 50% the old dirt with 50% new potting soil. And this is all brand new stuff I have in here. And this is why it's good to work on one of these tarps or shower curtains. I use it as a tarp that you get at the dollar store. So I'm going to kind of mix this. I might do it a little bit less than 50-50 because the quality of what I took out was still pretty good. There's some more of that. So see how good, nice, and fluffy that is? And by the way, it's helpful when you're getting out the compressed soil in a container. I find one of these hand picks really handy. You can kind of just chop it up and then remove it and put it on the tarp. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to change my philosophy of what I normally do. Over the years, I have had a number of different things in here, but primarily the one that had the most longevity was I had two huge boxwoods in here. They were in here for probably a dozen years, 15 years. And finally they just kind of started to show their wear and tear. They kind of lost their form. And so what I did was remove those, and then you guys probably saw me planting some beautiful Southern Living Oakland hollies in here, which were in here for 2 to 3 years. They would have done just fine if we hadn't had that -13 Arctic blast. Now, as a rule, when you're planting something in a container, you want it to be cold hardy to 2 zones below what you are. So I'm in 7B, so ideally I would plant things in containers that were hardy down to zone 5. Now, do I kind of cheat on that a little bit? Of course I do, and most of the time I have good success. But this year, because it was just so harsh, I'm going to do something that's a little bit different. I'm not going to come in here with fully mature specimens like I have before that were already, 3 to 4 to 5 feet tall, which came in really large container size, definitely 3-4 gallon or more. I'm going to start out with smaller varieties this time because they'll have a better chance of really growing in place and maturing in place and adapting a little bit better. So I've got some baby gem boxwoods from Southern Living, and I'm going to put those in here. And as always, I want to make sure that I really break up that root ball so it doesn't grow in a circle. This is something I've shown you guys before. And what this does is encourage this root ball to not only not grow in a circle, but it will encourage the generation of new, tinier feeder roots that will then easily expand out into the soil. And I'm pretty aggressive about doing this, you guys. It's still spring. I would not do this in the dead of summer because that would probably traumatize this plant too much. But in the spring, it will have time to recover, and in the long run, it's definitely going to be better for it. The other thing is, I can afford to get by with a smaller plant because everything around it is pretty mature, so I don't think it will look out of scale. So I'm going to plant this so that where it meets the root ball is about level with the pot. And I'm going to add a little bit of Osmocote. This is a slow release fertilizer. I'll put a link below. I'm just going to add some of that. And in pots, I am not nearly so particular about using an organic fertilizer or not. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is add a little bit of this Osmocote to my new soil. Now, I'm going to just take some of this soil. This is very much a how-to, you guys. How to reuse previously used soil. How to think about what you're going to put in your containers. And how to beautifully make over an existing space. And typically, of course, you want to make sure that, good morning, Mr. Bird. You want to make sure that you have the profile, the best looking profile forward, and then over time, if it looks like it's starting to not grow evenly, then I will torque this pot. It's heavy, but it's not that difficult to rotate it so that it gets even light on all sides. Okay, so there's that pot. That didn't take any time at all. And I will do the other one a little bit later. Okay, now Stuart, I'm going to ask you to step back. And we're working in tight quarters here, you guys. Now I'm going to replant this pot. Now this is one of my favorite ways to explain an assembly and a good looking grouping of container plantings. And that's what I call my kind of fairy tale method of pot congregation. Number one, I've got my Papa Bear pot, then I have a Mama Bear pot, and then I may have more or less of Baby Bear pots. That way, you know that they will pretty much all go together in terms of height, which will create good layering. They are all in the same family for the most part in terms of material and style, and that way you can easily put together a grouping of pots that will be very visually appealing overall and harmonious with the garden. Okay, so I've done the same thing here with this pot. I already had some soil in it that I had done in a 50-50 blend. I'm going to add a little bit of Osmocote to this. And now this year, since it helps me when I'm designing my containers to think about kind of what my thematic is, and since my thematic this year is going to be geraniums, then that kind of helps me think through what I want to put into the containers. Probably one of my favorite summer colors to work with is this wonderful dark pink, dark and light pink combo. These are angel wing begonias and they just really look beautiful, and I love this color. So that's going to be kind of my color inspiration. Now I already did one planting of geraniums yesterday. Now right now this looks lanky and kind of scruffy, but I promise you with some feeding and some warmer temperatures, this is going to get huge. These are all pelargoniums or geraniums that I overwintered in the greenhouse, brought them back out. They're very much alive. It's that beautiful color that I like. And then I've added some scented geraniums at the base. So I will continue to kind of keep this pinched so it fills out, and it really will be beautiful in very short order. On the other side, I've got some golden oregano. Stuart, if you can show right there, I've got some golden oregano that will spill out over this side. It looks a little scruffy now, but with some feeding and some warm temperatures, it'll be just fine. I can't wait to show it to you after it's already matured. Okay, so back to this pot. So I'm going to put in some really gorgeous scented geraniums. Now some of these are very tall and kind of lanky, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to address that. So, and I'm going to have to go back. My friend Monica is my source for scented geraniums. I'm going to put a link to her website below. If you're local in the area, she would be a good source. You often ask me where you can get scented geraniums, and she is my source. So this is in a container of just a gallon size, and what I'm wanting to do is get some verticality to this container. So I'm going to plant this one, and I believe that one, and then I'll show you how I'm going to support them. So I'm going to take this out of its container. Now, I could leave it in its container. This is what you want, you guys. This is perfectly grown, but see how it's not root bound? I don't even have to break up that root ball because it will just adapt to this soil just beautifully without me doing anything to it. Okay, now you stay there for a minute. Behave yourself. I've got another one over here that is also very tall. Okay, I'm loving the way this looks already. Now this one is in a larger container. Take it out of its pot. I'm sorry this is taking so long, you guys, but hopefully you always want to know the details of how things come together. Okay, so I'm going to put this one in here as well. Make this guy cooperate. Let's see, do I want this? I think that's what I want to do. These guys are going to have to get and grow in place for them to do exactly what I want them to do. But I have a feeling that they will cooperate, because here's going to be my trick. Now, what I really wanted was another metal tutor like that one, because I've got one there and I've got one here, over here, Stuart. But I didn't have any, and I wanted to go ahead and get these planted. So what I'm gonna do, my philosophy of just using what I already have, is I cut 3, since I had to cut back so many Nandina canes, I cut 3 Nandina canes. And these are gonna be my support. So I'm gonna put those in place. To make these guys stand up and fly right. And what I do is I kind of get them in place, and then later I'll torque them, I'll torture them a little bit to get them exactly where I want them to be. Now, that is supporting them, at least temporarily, like that, till I get my soil in. Again, this is my 50-50 blend. It's always helpful to have what I call a mise en place strategy, where you have everything that you need right at hand. Now, do I always do that? Heck no. Stuart's laughing because he knows how I rock and roll. Heck no. But I said ideally. So we're going to pretend like this is ideal. Okay, so I'm going to get this in place. Oh my gosh, I wish you guys could smell these geraniums. And I'll find out what type they are from Monica, and I will mark them and let you know. I am ignorant about all of my different varieties. I know I love them. I know they all smell incredible. But I'm working on becoming a connoisseur of scented geraniums, let's put it that way. Okay, I think that is going to be fabulous. Stuart, if you could show people what it looks like. I've broken off a couple of pieces, and I do try to always save any of those pieces. A lot of times I just give them back to Monica, and wherever I cut, it's going to come out and be a lot bushier. And these are kind of just a little bit lanky too, because they've been in her greenhouse. So I love the way this gives me height. So now here's one other flourish. I'm going to take this one out for right now. That I'm going to do that I think will be really beautiful. And then, you guys, I will finish planting the other pots in this congregation, which is just a little bit more of the same. And then tomorrow, when I do my thrifting video, I'll show you what it looks like, and I'll also put lots of stills in the community tab if you're a Facebook or if you're a YouTube member. I'll definitely do that for you guys. Now, if you would use these scented geraniums in a different way, if you grow them, if you are really infatuated by geraniums this year like I am, please let me know in the comments below. I am going to do, I'm hoping to do anyway, time permitting, something of what I call a geranium theater, where I'm going to put lots of geraniums all together in one place. Now, this is a beautiful heucherella from Southern Living. I believe this one, let's see which variety it is. It's Alabama Sunrise. I thought that's what it was. So I'm going to take some of the soil off of this. Again, this is just beautiful, not compressed roots. I'm only taking this dirt off so I can get it to fit in here. And then I'm going to have this spill out over the edge. And I think that is going to be gorgeous. And that will hide some of the lankiness at the bottom. I think I'm going to put a couple of these in, you guys. And you'll notice, Stuart, if you don't mind panning over in that direction, I showed you yesterday, I believe, one of my winners from the winter of last year's, that golden barberry. Stuart was looking at me like, what are you going to talk about? Where am I supposed to go? To the golden barberry. And this, as I look out my kitchen window, this golden heucherella will be in the foreground of that golden barberry. So I'll have a wonderful color echo and color repetition, which I think will be spectacular. Do what? Oh yeah, show them the viburnum. You can't ever get enough of the viburnum. Stuart will tell you that is the most asked about plant in my garden, I believe. Okay, you guys, I'm going to put my third pot of this in. But first, I want to tell you what else I'm going to do here, and then I'll close this out and then show you the end result of the makeover tomorrow. So you're going to want to make sure to stay tuned. So what else am I going to do? I'm going to plant all of these angel wing begonias in this saucer planter in the front. I've got a small cone Baby Gem Southern Living boxwood that I'm going to plant in here, and that will repeat the glossiness of all of this. And then something else I'm going to do, which will be a whole different video, and I'll show you how I do it. You may recall from last year's videos that I had hanging baskets right here. I think I'm going to do that again with one exception, and that's that this year I'm going to use hanging baskets that are from my own QVC line. So I will let you know exactly when my show will be on QVC, where you can get all of the products, but this is something else that's in the product line. I've never been able to find hanging baskets this large in any of my regular places that I shop. So, and also in line with my Mama Bear, Papa Bear, Baby Bear, they'll come in threes and different finishes. These are large, these are massive, and they'll come in threes, and I'm going to hang some of them from this tree. And then you guys, it gets this wonderful little, what's called a romance card, a little card from me to you that talks about my Signature Touches garden line. So, more deets to come. Thank you for helping me plant and do my work this morning. I can't wait to show you what it looks like when it's all finished. So I'm going to finish up here, and you guys have a great Saturday. Well, this is in response to about 1,000 questions that I've received recently, especially now that it's gotten hot, about how I water. Well, I do have an in-ground irrigation system, but I don't rely on it as heavily as you might think. Usually I only put it on automatic when I'm out of town, and I'm home right now. Even though it's hot, I still don't have it turned on. I will only turn it on a manual basis. Right now, you may be asking, okay, does that mean you hand water all of this stuff? Well, yes and no. So let me start out by just showing you, in terms of hand watering, what my setup is and how I kind of think about it. So I've got one of these, I think it's a, what is it? What brand is this? This is a Suncast hose holder, and you can see that it's got a lever on it that I can just roll it up pretty easily and unwind it as I use the hose. And then my spigot is just underneath the window box on the back of the house. So I also like to use, and I think most of the time I've gotten these from Gardener's Supply, I like using these handheld sprayers where easily with your thumb you can on and off the flow. I can also change the flow to a stream or to a hard jet or whatever. Now the reason I really like this is not only because it's especially wonderful if you have arthritis or you have difficulty with your hand and thumb movements, but also because I can easily turn it on and off so I'm not wasting water in between as I'm moving from one area of the garden to another area. So let me show you what I mean. And I'm also going to make a distinction. This is another way that I kind of think of the outdoors as just like rooms in my house. I have two categories of potted plants, maybe three, but the two I'm going to talk about today are ones that I call furniture and ones that I call throw pillows. So the furniture, those are the ones that are in really large, massive concrete pots. Most of the time they're evergreens. They stay outside year round. I don't have to move them in and out of the greenhouse. And because they're in such large pots and most of them are established, they don't take nearly as much water. So I don't have to water them a lot. But the throw pillows, those things that flower, that are in pots that are a little bit smaller, those require a lot more attention, and as temperatures skyrocket, their watering needs skyrocket as well. So those are kind of my two different categories that helps me know how much I'm going to need to water them. Now, about once a week, I water everything really, really deeply, hand watering it. But on a daily basis, this is what I do. So I start out, this is a wonderful, it's part of an Italian line of hoses that comes from Gardener's Supply. And I start out in the area that's farthest away, and I'm not sure exactly how long this hose is, but it's a really long hose. And I do that because the hose doesn't kink then as I get closer to the house. It straightens it out. There's no curves. There's no kinking. So you can see I've gotten all the way to the back of my garden. I use another hose. Stuart, if you can see that one there, I've got laid out. I use another hose for the potager. But this one is so easily put away. I can roll it up and I can contain it pretty easily. So this is one of the plants that I think of as a furniture plant. So I only water it maybe twice a week, and I water it pretty deeply, but on a daily basis I don't have to water it at all. So basically what I'm watering here are what I call the throw pillow plants. The flowers, or the things that are going to flower. I might water that because I just newly planted it. Now notice that I can turn it off in between each plant, so I'm not wasting any water. I've got a couple of potted plants down here. This plant was recently installed, so I'm going to give it a little bit more water. You'll notice if I want to make sure that it gets all the way to the root ball, which is what's most important, I can do concentrated watering. Then I put it back where it was. If I need to water something in the distance, this jet is great. Typically I wouldn't have to water this. Okay, now I'm going to move over here. I've got these two baskets that need lots of water. And I'm really going to make sure that I get down at the root zone of these pots. These are actually plastic pots that are set inside these baskets. Then on a lot of plants, it's best that you not overhead water because that can induce fungal problems. But number one, I always water in the morning so there's a chance for the foliage to dry before the sun gets too high in the sky and the foliage burns, and also so that it can dry off and alleviate any kind of fungal problems. Now, some I do intentionally overhead water because it helps mitigate any problems with pests. It will knock off spider mites, aphids, any other kinds of things that might become problematic. And then if anything that's growing in the ground looks like it's suffering or in distress, I can give it an extra drink of water. But I don't unless I think it really needs it. So then I'm going to do this pot. And by the way, this is a wonderful scented geranium. And when I water it, it infuses the air with its scent. So I love that. This is also what I would consider to be a furniture plant that normally wouldn't get a lot of attention from me, but I haven't watered it in a while. These are smaller topiaries, and obviously any kind of topiaries or anything that are in small pots, those need to be watered much more frequently. It's also one of the reasons that I put gravel on the surface of the pots, because I want to make sure that that water doesn't wick away real quickly. Another thing, if temperatures are high and if conditions are extremely windy, then you're going to have to water more, and it's best that you hand water, because any kind of sprinkling system, all of that water will just evaporate away and it won't reach the targeted areas. So you do have to water more in a windy environment. Here are some more topiaries whose leaves are a little bit browned. And again, that's because of the high wind we had the other day. This little table here has a lip on it. And to create a moist environment, a humid environment, and it hasn't really attracted mosquitoes or anything, I sometimes will add extra water, because the tray effect increases the humidity, and all of these really want pretty much water, even the rosemary, because they're in smaller pots. Okay, Stuart, if you'll follow me over here without tripping on the hose. So back in here, I just recently planted some dahlia tubers. So I'm going to give them, and this would be true also if I had seeded anything in this area. Let's say I'd seeded some zinnias or something, then I want to keep this moist. Sometimes, especially if they're seedlings, I might do this multiple times a day. Then I've got some pots over here. This is when it's helpful to have a jet. If it's a hard to reach area, I can still get to the root zone by putting this on kind of a hard jet. These were hydrangeas that were in full bloom, but I want to contain their growth, so I've cut them back some. Okay, over in here, I also consider these to be furniture plants, these boxwoods in these pots, but I've got some thyme that I planted around the perimeter, and I want it to get established, so I'm going to give it a little bit more water. Now I'm going to show you on these topiaries, I'm going to show you another way, because they require a lot of moisture. I'm going to show you another way that I deep water them once a week. And on these pots, I wait till it pretty much runs out the bottom. Okay, here's another furniture plant. And I'm showing you all of this because I want you to not only get an idea of how I water my plants, but also approximately how long it takes. I've got some newly planted hydrangeas back in here. Again, I can focus at the root zone, and I will do this every day until I feel that they're pretty well established. that I potted up this boxwood not too long ago. It's still getting established in the pot, so even though it's a furniture plant, I'll water it today as well. Now, because I use so many pots that are located back in the garden beds, I just have to kind of remember where they are, and I don't have to bend or anything. I can use the jet end of my hose to make sure that they get a really deep water, and it's right at the root zone. Very little foliar contact. The rest of this area doesn't require a lot of water, and about once or twice a week when I decide to use the in-ground irrigation system, this will all get watered with a combination of a drip line and a mist head system. So over here, that is a furniture plant. This is a furniture plant. This is a small furniture plant. That is a furniture plant. But this up here is a big throw pillow. And because it's elevated, it's subject to high wind all of the time. So I really make sure that it is deeply watered around the perimeter, not just in one section, but all around it. Believe it or not, these lavenders need more water than you would think. So I hydrate them pretty well. Now I've got 2 Oakland hollies that are on the perimeter of this little porch on either end. I hardly ever water these evergreens because they just don't need it. They don't get a ton of light. They're in huge pots, so I don't have to water them very often. Now, sometimes though, these are the pots you want to pay most attention to, because since I hardly ever water them, all of a sudden they will look kind of limp and dry, and I'll realize I haven't watered them in so long that they really need a good deep soak. So over here, same thing. There's a topiary there. There's a pot here that's got some dahlias in it. And again, I do this all in the morning, usually in my pajamas. All of these I consider to be throw pillows. And because they flower so abundantly, they really need pretty much water. Now, because these flower abundantly and because I'm watering them a lot, it means they have to be fed more often. Okay, these large boxwoods, I also consider to be furniture plants. I don't water them very often. Even the small boxwoods I don't water a lot. There's an Elysium back in there. This huge euonymus hardly ever gets watered. These ferns I only water about once every 3 days. Now, the thing is, all of this may think, okay, how do you remember all of this? You know your own garden. You know which things need more water. You know which plants in your landscape get a lot of sun and which ones are going to dry out. And you can do some things then to help prevent them drying out. You can move the pots. You can plant them, repot them into a larger pot if necessary that can hold more water. You can put them in the shade. There's different things that you can do. So then in the bistro area over here, I've got some lemon cypress, and I don't worry too much about, I don't consider it wasted water if it gets around the pot itself, because that provides residual and ambient humidity for the plant itself. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So I don't If I'm not extremely careful in my targeting, I don't worry about it too much. And pretty much these, for the most part, I only water sporadically. So that does it. I guess I need to water these guys over here. This is also one of those tray tables. If I've just planted anything, or if it's been repotted, then I will give it a lot more watering attention. And I need to give some attention to my bird bath. But that's how I have done this entire area. But come over here, I want to show you one other thing. This would have taken me even less time, except that I'm talking to you guys. About once every 2 weeks, I get a really big bucket and I fill it all the way to the top with water and some liquid organic plant food. I don't have the bottle to show you, but usually I'll use Espoma or any kind of liquid organic. And then I take my smaller pots, especially my topiaries, and I completely submerge them. And the myrtles, because they really like water, I'll even leave them in here for a while until there's no air bubbles at all that come up from the pot. You can still see a few air bubbles over there, I think. Then I know it's been completely saturated. They are fed, they're happy, and I put them back in place. And I do this about once every couple of weeks. I do it with my myrtle topiaries. I do it with my boxwoods, my smaller potted plants. And it really doesn't take that much time. It's just whenever I'm strolling through the garden, I just switch out one pot for another. So there are some ideas for you on how to water your plants. It doesn't take as much time as you think. I actually find it really nice because I do it in the morning when the birds are out. It's still cool. I don't consider it to be much of a chore. I really kind of enjoy it. And I find it kind of a pleasant activity, and the water itself kind of keeps you cool. So in answer to your question, do I hand water all of these plants? Hopefully that addressed that issue. And if you say, oh gosh, you just have way too many potted plants, that takes so much time, yes it may. But remember, this is what I do. This is my job. This is what I love. If I worked in an office or I worked at a different kind of occupation, I'd be spending all my time doing that. This is my workplace, and so I don't really think of it as any kind of onerous activity at all. I really enjoy it, and I try to be as water efficient as I can about it, which is why all the gravel is on top of all of the pots. But I enjoy it, the birds enjoy it, the pollinators enjoy it, and hopefully you enjoyed this too. So until next time, get your hose out.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.